Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. My sister linked me a video, which I'm going to link below, which is absolutely fascinating. But I have a background in research, and I know from deep dives in research that what we want to get to is a mechanism, this is the why and how something works. And when you get really down, mechanism is very, very deep. It's extremely deep understanding of something. And when you know the mechanism of something, you can do all kinds of things. Vaccines are one example of a result of a mechanism, and just one example. So today, my sister linked me this video about the cat food that you can feed cats to eliminate cat allergies, and it contains eggs from chickens who were exposed to cats, and the eggs have an antigen in them. For a very long time, I've heard two other things. All three of these things clicked in my brain, and I want to know. I want to know so badly if this is the mechanism. The first thing that I've heard throughout my life is that people who live, work, and or were raised on farms have substantially less allergies. If they have them, they're less severe. They're far less likely to have them overall. It's a huge difference. And there has been an expressed curiosity as to why in research, because understanding why would help us treat allergies in the human population in general. I have also heard that people who have pollen allergies should go buy local honey. And the theory behind why that works was that there would be microscopic amounts of pollen in the honey, which there is. Totally true. And that micro exposure might in fact desensitize you. But there are allergies that having additional exposure to only worsens. So what about those individuals? And that's individual by individual. So for one individual, an exposure might eventually desensitize them if it's microscopic, while others, it'll actually build up a worse and worse and worse reaction. What if instead it is not the pollen microexposure, but an antigen that the bees are producing? And you are then consuming the antigen, just like these cats are consuming the antigen to the protein that causes you an allergy. If that's the case, if it's an antigen, that antigen breaking down a specific thing, then people living on farms, especially for two additional reasons, not just the consumption of our own products, because, for example, right now the only animal product I have from my own farm is my goat's milk. Just one thing. I would be shocked if their milk doesn't contain antigens, because I know from nursing my own daughter that that's one of the advantages of a nursed baby. So I would be shocked if their milk doesn't have antigens, but does it have antigens to everything? Who knows? The thing is that typically if you're growing your own, you also trade it with neighbors, and you usually go buy from local farmers markets. So in general, we are consuming honey that is locally grown. We are consuming eggs that is locally grown. So the key point is there are animal products that are locally grown if it's antigens. That's the mechanism. So I seriously want to know if that's what the mechanism is. There's one other key point about this, that there's a ton of stuff out there by PETA that are outright lies. For example, sheep are not killed for a wool sweater. They're shaved. And if they're not shaved, they will die in the heat. That's just one example. There are lots of people who are under the assumption that bees are killed to harvest honey, which is beyond illogical if you've ever we haven't kept bees of our own, but we seriously considered it and we were taking the classes to do so. You do not harm bees in that process. There are one or two, for example, if you suspect, tongue-tied, if you suspect a varroa mite infection, there is a test. It is not the preferred test, but one of the tests that you can do takes a few of the bees and shakes them in rubbing alcohol in order to determine whether the varroa mites are in there. But that is not the test you do first. There are multiple other tests that you do first. And in fact, very few people actually do the test I just described. So as you begin to learn about beekeeping, you learn like that's a last resort. If you have a hive that's dying of some unknown reason, you might do that. But otherwise, beekeepers are doing everything they can not to harm bees whatsoever. And the honey harvest, it's like 90 pounds of surplus that they have produced. So they don't need it. And in fact, the majority of bees that are still alive and thriving are alive and thriving because of farmers. We are facing the collapse of feral honeybees. So the honeybees in the general environment are facing collapse due to numerous pressures. That's something that you know if you live on a farm. I have had people tell me that milk production is cruel. My goats, I actually occasionally need to pull colostrum from them. That's within the first 3 days of birth because a kid doesn't latch immediately. And if you pull their own colostrum, the kid needs colostrum. They could take colostrum from any doe, but if you pull their own doe's colostrum, the doe herself is more likely to take the kid back because the sense of smell is how they identify them in the beginning. So I know for a fact that standing in a field, my doe will stand still for me and let me pull colostrum off of her right after birth because her kids didn't latch. And it's not because her kids didn't latch, because she's often had, the doe in question in that scenario has frequently had quads. She's not even sure how many she's got on the ground yet because she has just delivered and she is kind of in she's in labor land, as we would put it for a new mom. So she's fine with it. I can go out into the field and milk my does. They're fine with it. My does are spoiled and pampered and taken care of. And because I keep them, I know that they're well cared for. Because I keep chickens, I know that they're well cared for. So when you live on a farm, you're not going to believe PETA when they say that they kill bees to harvest honey or kill sheep to harvest wool, which they don't. Which means even if you were to go vegetarian, if you live on a farm, you're still likely going to consume honey, milk, and eggs because you know if you live on a farm, if you've raised those animals, that we just feed them. Chickens literally just walk away from all of their eggs. They never bother to brood a clutch unless there have to be roughly 6, even in a very broody hen, there have to be at least 6 eggs sitting there to get them to sit there. They won't bother for a single egg. So we actually have to collect up the eggs that we would like our broody hens to brood. They don't care if there aren't, and they won't sit on them and stay with them until they're 12 eggs or more. So your hen doesn't care. Your hen really doesn't care about the eggs. As a matter of fact, they will only brood in the spring and in the fall. Mostly in the spring, the chickens will go broody. The rest of the year, even if I leave eggs there and there are 13, they're still going to walk away from them. They won't stick around for them during the winter or during the summer. So it doesn't harm the animals. And and in fact, they benefit because they get free feed out of the deal and predator protection out of the deal and medical care out of the deal. So they get all 3 of those things to put milk, eggs, and honey on the table. And if you live on a farm, you know those are humane. So even if you do go vegetarian, and there are vegetarian farmers, even they are still consuming honey, eggs, and milk. So I really want to know if that's what the mechanism is.